Evan had devoted 6 years to persuading himself that the past was a closed chapter, until the moment he laid eyes on the locket. A delicate silver heart, shimmering in the waning sunlight, rests gently around the neck of a young girl with golden locks and recognizable blue eyes. His world shifted as the weight of understanding enveloped him. He recognized that locket. Years ago, he had presented one just like it to Selina. Evan Sterling had devoted the past 6 years to persuading himself that the life he had crafted was sufficient. His enterprise flourished, his fortune expanded, and he possessed all that a man could desire, save for the one thing he had never allowed himself to acknowledge he truly needed. He had immersed himself in his craft, in achievement, in mastery. It was simpler that way. It distracted him from dwelling on the past, from contemplating what he had lost, from the woman who had vanished from his life without a trace. That evening, following yet another exhausting day at the office, he chose to stroll through the park close to his penthouse. He seldom engaged in such activities, yet the tranquility of the early evening, the echoes of laughter in the distance, and the gentle rustle of leaves compelled him to ease his stride. For the first time in years, he found himself embracing the simple act of breathing, though he couldn't quite pinpoint the reason behind it. At that moment, he caught sight of them. 2 little girls frolicked by the fountain, their golden locks shimmering in the warm glow of the setting sun. They appeared indistinguishable, gliding in flawless harmony as they giggled and spun in their gowns. Evan typically overlooked children, yet there was something about them that caused him to stop and take notice. There was an unmistakable sense of recognition in their demeanor, in the way their vibrant blue eyes twinkled with joy when they smiled. Then one of them shifted their gaze toward him, and he beheld it. A silver heart-shaped locket dangled from her neck, catching the last rays of the setting sun. His whole being became rigid. He recognized that locket. Long ago, he had presented a matching one to Selina. It was a modest offering, a delicate symbol of his feelings, yet she held it dear. She donned it daily. His heart raced within him as he instinctively moved ahead. The girls were oblivious to his presence, engrossed in their game, when suddenly a woman's voice rang out from a nearby bench, breaking their focus. "Lily, Sophie, the moment has come to depart." Evan pivoted in the direction of the voice, and a gasp lodged itself in his throat. Perched on the bench, Selina observed the girls with keen attention. She appeared transformed, her formerly lengthy hair now cropped, her face bearing a hint of fatigue, yet there was no doubt about her identity. It was she. She had arrived. Vibrant. Accompanying her were 2 little girls who bore an uncanny resemblance to him. The surroundings faded into a haze. 6 years. 6 years of quiet, of thinking she was lost, of attempting to let go. And now, there she sat, just a few feet away, accompanied by 2 daughters who possessed his eyes and his golden hair. His thoughts surged with inquiries, with skepticism, with fury. She had kept it to herself all along. She had never allowed him the opportunity to understand. Selina seemed to feel his eyes on her, prompting her to glance upward. As their gazes locked, the world around them faded into oblivion. A flicker of shock crossed her face, soon replaced by a swirl of emotions, fear, hesitation, and guilt. She was aware. She was aware that he had witnessed. She understood that escape was not an option. Evan advanced, fists tight against his sides, his heart thundering in his chest like a battle call. "Selina," he murmured, his voice steady yet brimming with the tempest that churned within him. For an extended pause, she remained still. Then, just above a whisper, she murmured, "Evan." The sound of his name on her lips, even after all these years, ignited a whirlwind of emotions within him, pain, anger, and an aching longing. The girls glanced at their mother, bewildered by the unexpected shift in the atmosphere. In an instant, everything he knew was transformed. For 6 long years, he had held on to the belief that he was utterly alone. However, he was not. Not any longer. Selina appeared as though she was ready to flee. Evan noticed the subtle twitch of her fingers, the slight hitch in her breath that caught his attention. Yet she remained still. She remained seated, her fingers clutching the edge of the bench as though it were her sole anchor to reality. Evan advanced, his gaze fixed intently on hers. He was overwhelmed by a torrent of emotions, anger, disbelief, confusion, each one battling for dominance within him. Yet beneath the surface lay a deeper truth, a more profound ache. Deceit. For 6 years, he had navigated his existence under the impression that Selina was lost to him, that the bond they once cherished had faded into the past. Initially, he had sought her out, yearning for answers, but eventually, he compelled himself to let go. He had persuaded himself that her departure was a matter of choice, that she had willingly vanished from his life. And now he found himself here, gazing at 2 little girls who mirrored his own features, and he came to a profound realization. She didn't merely depart. She had stolen something from him. Mother. One of the girls, Lily, if he had heard correctly, gazed at Selina with a look of pure, innocent bewilderment. Who is that? Selina took a deep breath, her gaze flickering between Evan and her daughters. Her voice quivered just a bit, and then she exhaled slowly. He's an old friend. The words cut deep into him. A long-lost companion. That was his role in her life at this moment. Evan tightened his jaw, striving to maintain his composure. He refused to engage in this here. Not in front of the ladies. Yet, it seemed Selina could feel his thoughts, as she suddenly rose, casting a glance toward the girls. Why don't you both continue playing for a bit longer? Her voice carried a softness yet held a resolute strength, and after a moment's pause, the girls nodded and hurried back to the fountain. Evan hardly hesitated for them to be out of earshot before he began to speak. A familiar companion from the past. His voice was soft and measured, yet he was aware that she could sense the underlying tension of feeling within it. Selina pursed her lips, averting her gaze. What was I meant to express, Evan? He released a dry chuckle, shaking his head in disbelief. What about the reality? What if I revealed my true self to them? She recoiled. For just a fleeting moment, he caught a glimpse of it. Evan moved in, his voice dropping to a whisper. Do they belong to me? Selina shut her eyes for a fleeting instant before reopening them once more. This time, she held her gaze steady. Absolutely. The solitary term struck him with more force than he had anticipated. He had already been aware, how could he not be, when the likeness was so striking? Yet, when the words resonated in the air, her affirmation transformed the notion into a tangible reality that left him gasping for breath. His hands clenched into tight fists at his sides. Why didn't you share this with me? Selina released a slow breath. Evan is absent. Kindly. He cast a glance at the girls. Lily playfully splashed water at Sophie, and their laughter filled the air. Unbeknownst to them, the man just a few feet away was their father. A certain aspect of that thought churned in his stomach. He glanced over his shoulder at Selina. So, where to next? With a moment of uncertainty, she delved into her bag and retrieved a tiny slip of paper. She hastily jotted down a few words and extended it toward him. Let's rendezvous here in an hour. Evan accepted the paper, his gaze elsewhere. His gaze was fixed on hers, unwavering and intense. This is not something you can simply escape, Selina. His voice carried a subtle strength, calm yet resolute. This isn't the moment. Selina nodded, and for the first time since he had laid eyes on her, she appeared as shattered as he felt. I understand. Silently, she pivoted and made her way back to the girls, gently grasping each of their hands in her own. She guided them onward, their golden locks glistening in the twilight, their joyous laughter echoing in the atmosphere. Evan observed their departure, his fingers clutching the piece of paper with such intensity that it wrinkled in his grasp. 6 years. 6 years of being absent from their lives. At this moment, he was determined to uncover the truth. Evan reached the location Selina provided him precisely 1 hour later. It was a quaint little cafe hidden on a serene street, a world away from the imposing skyscrapers and upscale eateries he was accustomed to. The location exuded a cozy, welcoming vibe, one that enveloped individuals in a sense of belonging. But Evan wasn't present for solace. Upon entering, his gaze was instantly drawn to her. Selina occupied a corner table, cradling a cup of coffee in her hands, her eyes glued to the window as though she were adrift in contemplation. For a brief instant, he paused, observing her intently. She appeared unlike the image he had in his mind. The passage of time had gentled her, yet it had also etched its presence upon her. Her expression held a weariness, a quality that seemed unfamiliar and new. He pondered whether she perceived the same qualities within him. With a steadying breath, he approached and settled into the chair opposite her. Selina lifted her gaze, her grip on the cup becoming a touch more firm. "You arrived," she murmured. Evan emitted a humorless laugh. "Did you really believe I wouldn't?" She let out a breath, her gaze drifting to her coffee. "I'm not sure what I anticipated." He observed her intently for a moment, then rested his hands on the table, leaning in just a bit. "Begin speaking, Selina. Enough with the justifications. It's time to face it head-on. I seek to understand the reasons behind this." She took a deep breath, then gradually raised her gaze to connect with his. Fear gripped me. Evan's jaw clenched. "What do you mean? About me?" She gently shook her head. "No. What it would signify to share with you. Of what it might bring upon you. For us." His fingers gently curled against the table. "That choice isn't yours to make for me." "I understand," she murmured. "I understand that now." Silence lingered between them, dense and laden with the unspoken words that had accumulated over 6 long years. At last, Selina exhaled deeply and squared her shoulders. "I discovered I was expecting after our breakup," she began, her voice calm yet gentle. "I considered sharing it with you. I truly did. Yet in that moment, you were," she paused, seeking the perfect expression. Evan was already aware of her intentions. Devoured. Unyielding. Consumed by his profession. There was no need for her to voice it. He embodied all of those qualities in the past, and it was those very traits that led to her loss. She went on, "I figured that if I shared this with you, it would create a sense of obligation. That you would force yourself into the role of a father despite not feeling prepared. I wished for something different for them." Evan tightened his jaw, a silent storm brewing within him. "You didn't allow me the opportunity to attempt." Selina's expression softened, and for the first time, genuine regret flickered in her eyes. She acknowledged it. "And I can never undo that." Evan reclined in his chair, his hand gliding over his face. For years, he believed she had left because her love for him wasn't strong enough to endure. He had never thought that her departure might have been an act of safeguarding something precious. Yet, the pain remained unchanged. Their gazes locked once more. "What comes next?" Selina paused for a moment, then turned her gaze toward the window. "I'm not sure," she confessed. "However, there is one thing I am certain of. They have a right to understand your true self." Those words stirred something deep within him. For 6 years, he existed in a realm where the concept of family was a distant thought, and his past was a shadow he had chosen to conceal. However, he found himself with 2 daughters. Regardless of the past, he was determined that they would not grow up without knowing him. "I want to meet them," he declared with conviction. Selina gazed at him intently for a prolonged moment, then gave a subtle nod. "Understood." The response fell short of perfection. The resolution did not come swiftly. Yet, it marked the beginning. The following day, Evan found himself positioned outside a humble suburban residence, gazing intently at the front door. His heart raced more intensely than it ever had in any conference room, any discussion, any critical agreement. He confronted fierce rivals, made instantaneous choices that could change fortunes, and crafted a vast empire from nothing. Yet, he had faced nothing in his life that could have equipped him for this moment. Selina had provided him with the address and a specific time to arrive, but now that he stood at the location, uncertainty gripped him, leaving him hesitant to take the next step. It wasn't the dread of being turned away that restrained him, it was the significance of what this moment represented. He was on the verge of reuniting with his daughters. He should have recognized them from the instant they entered the world. With a steadying inhale, he rapped on the door. Moments ticked by before the door swung open, revealing them at last. Lily and Sophie stood side by side, their matching blue eyes sparkling with intrigue. The similarity became even more pronounced upon closer inspection. Their golden blonde hair elegantly framed their delicate features, while their small hands clutched the edge of the doorway as they gazed up at him. Selina emerged from behind them, presenting a gentle, comforting smile. "Ladies, meet Evan." They took their time to respond. Lily tilted her head slightly, observing him with a gravity that felt remarkably advanced for someone of her tender age. Sophie adjusted her stance, her gaze flitting between him and her mother. Evan cleared his throat, a wave of uncertainty washing over him as he pondered his next words. He had always found comfort in language, yet now, facing these two tiny beings who were inexplicably his, he felt adrift. "Hi," he finally said, his tone gentler than he had anticipated. Sophie was the first to reply. "Hello." Lily continued to observe him, her small brows knitted together in concentration. "My mother mentioned that you were acquainted with her in the past." Selina offered her a soft gaze. "Indeed, my dear." Lily cast her gaze upon Evan once more. "So, what brings you here now?" The question struck him with the force of a gut-wrenching blow. He parted his lips, then sealed them once more, grappling with the challenge of conveying something so intricate to a young mind. Selina knelt beside them, gently resting a reassuring hand on Lily's back. "Sometimes, adults err," she murmured gently. "At times, the correct course of action remains unclear until a later moment reveals it." Lily paused to reflect on that for a moment before turning her gaze toward Sophie. "Do you believe he's kind?" Sophie gave a slight shrug. "I'm uncertain. Perhaps." Evan nearly chuckled, but he restrained himself. He didn't anticipate their immediate acceptance. He was a stranger to them, and he had no reason to think they would recognize him. Yet, he stood firm in the present moment, determined to demonstrate that he was here to stay. Selina stood tall, offering him a subtle nod. "Shall we head indoors?" Evan trailed behind them as they entered the house. The atmosphere was inviting and snug, brimming with subtle reminders of a life he longed for, colorful drawings adorning the fridge, small shoes neatly arranged by the entrance, and plush toys scattered across the couch. It lacked the frigid opulence of his high-rise suite. It was a completely different experience. A sensation reminiscent of belonging. Selina guided them into the living room, where a handful of toys lay strewn across the floor. The girls nestled onto the couch, huddled together as they observed him with a mix of curiosity and caution. He settled into the armchair opposite them, sensing the weight of their scrutiny upon him. Sophie gestured towards his wrist. "What is that?" Evan cast a quick look at his watch. "It is a timepiece." Sophie knitted her brows in discontent. "It gleams with a brilliant shine." Lily gently prodded her. "Perhaps he possesses great wealth." Selina chuckled softly, a smile playing on her lips as she shook her head. "Ladies, we discussed this matter." Evan offered a faint smile. "It's all right." "Indeed, one might say that." Sophie's eyes grew large with surprise. "Is your house quite spacious?" "I certainly do." Lily folded her arms across her chest. "Larger than this one?" "Absolutely." She appeared indifferent. "Do you own a dog?" Evan paused, uncertainty flickering in his mind. "Negative." Lily glanced over at Sophie. "In that case, I don't believe it's particularly impressive." Selina pressed her lips together to hold back a giggle, and Evan found himself grinning uncontrollably. He was completely unaware of his actions, yet for the first time in years, a sense of belonging washed over him, as if he were precisely where he needed to be. And thus, it began. Evan settled into the armchair, observing as Lily and Sophie regarded him with a blend of caution and intrigue. He anticipated a surge of emotions, maybe a thrill, or possibly a swift dismissal. Instead, they were merely watching him, attempting to understand his identity and how he belonged in their realm. He found it hard to hold them accountable. For 5 years, he had remained just an unfamiliar face. They had forged their lives in his absence, unaware of the shadow he cast on their existence. In just one day, he transformed from an anonymous figure into something greater. There was an aspect that remained elusive to them. Selina settled onto the couch next to the girls, her presence offering a gentle comfort to them. She held back, refraining from imposing a connection, and for that, he felt thankful. Sophie was the one to shatter the stillness. "If you're my dad, does that mean you'll always be around from now on?" Evan cast a quick look at Selina before responding. "I'm here for you, as much as you need me to be." Lily squinted, her gaze sharp and probing, as if she were on the hunt for deception. "However, your presence was absent previously." Evan inhaled deeply. "No, I was not. I truly wish I had been." Lily inclined her head. "What was the reason for your absence?" Selina adjusted her position, poised to intervene, yet Evan lifted a hand to signal her to wait. He had to find the answer within himself. He confessed that he was unaware. "Your mother didn't inform me." Sophie scowled. "What's stopping us?" Selina took a moment to clear her throat. "I found myself uncertain about whether it was the appropriate choice in that moment." Lily glanced over her shoulder at Evan. "What comes next?" Evan locked eyes with her, unwavering and assured. "At this moment, my desire is to be present. I wish to get to know both of you. I desire for you to truly understand me." The room fell into a hush as the girls absorbed his words. Sophie let her legs dangle off the side of the couch, observing him intently. "Are you a fan of ice cream?" Evan stared, momentarily taken aback by the abrupt shift in conversation. "Indeed, I do." Sophie nodded, her expression suggesting that this was an important point to consider. "Which type?" "Classic." Lily grimaced. "That lacks excitement." Evan let out a soft laugh. "What are your preferences?" Lily proclaimed, "chocolate chip cookie dough." Sophie included strawberry. Evan nodded with a grave expression. "Those selections are quite commendable." Sophie appeared content with that response and leaned in closer to Lily. "He's not as terrible as some might think." Lily let out a deep sigh, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "I suppose." Evan glanced at Selina, who responded with a subtle, understanding smile. It may have been small, yet it marked a step forward. "Hey ladies, how about we grab some ice cream together sometime?" he inquired. Sophie's eyes sparkled with excitement, yet she glanced at Lily, eager to see her response. Lily paused, her fingers drumming lightly on the couch's fabric. At last, she gave a slight shrug. "Perhaps." Evan beamed with delight. "I'll interpret that as an affirmative." For the first time, the atmosphere in the room appeared to ease just a bit. The girls hesitated to label him as dad or fully trust him, yet they were willing to extend him a chance. At this moment, that was more than sufficient. A few days later, Evan stood outside a quaint ice cream shop, patiently waiting while Selina assisted the girls in choosing their flavors. It was a charming little spot, distant from the upscale eateries and elite locations he was accustomed to, yet there was an essence of simplicity that resonated deeply. Lily and Sophie stood before the glass display case, their tiny faces nearly touching as they scrutinized the vibrant array of ice cream flavors. Sophie was bouncing lightly on her toes, radiating excitement, while Lily moved with deliberation, thoughtfully weighing her choices. Selina glanced at Evan, a playful smile dancing on her lips. They approached their ice cream choices with utmost seriousness. Evan wore a sly grin. I understand that. After what seemed like an endless stretch of time, Sophie ultimately reached her conclusion. Strawberry adorned with sprinkles. The young worker at the counter beamed as she filled the cone with the order, presenting it with a friendly gesture. Sophie accepted it with great care, her face lighting up with joy. Lily, lost in her musings, eventually gave a slight nod. Cookie dough with chocolate chips. Evan felt no shock. She had expressed her favorite flavor quite distinctly during their last conversation. After everyone received their ice cream, they discovered a quaint little table outside, sheltered beneath a generous umbrella. The girls settled into their seats, their legs swinging playfully as they savored their treats. Evan savored a small bite of his vanilla cone, noticing Sophie observing him with a contemplative look. "Do you always wear suits?" she inquired, tilting her head. Evan looked down at his impeccably tailored navy blue suit and smiled. "Exactly." "Do you really eat ice cream?" she inquired, her eyes sparkling with intrigue. At that moment, Lily wrinkled her nose in distaste. "That's quite unusual." Selina let out a soft laugh, shaking her head in amusement. "I mentioned he had a certain flair." Sophie savored another bite of her ice cream, then gestured towards Evan's wrist. "Your watch still gleams with that unmistakable shine." Lily corrected her, saying, "It's called a Rolex." Evan lifted an eyebrow in curiosity. "Are you familiar with what a Rolex is?" Lily gave a slight shrug. "I enjoy watching shows." Sophie chuckled, clearly amused by her sister's self-assurance. Evan inclined his body a bit forward. "What other activities do you both enjoy apart from indulging in ice cream?" Sophie brightened instantly. "I enjoy creating illustrations. And move with grace. I aspire to become a ballerina in the future." "That's truly remarkable," Evan remarked with sincerity. "Are you taking lessons?" She nodded with great enthusiasm. "Every Saturday, my mom takes me out." Evan committed that to memory. Lily, in contrast, exhibited a more subdued demeanor. She savored her ice cream, her gaze fixed on the cone as if it contained the secrets of the universe. "How about you, Lily?" Evan encouraged softly. She paused for a moment, then gave a slight shrug. "I have a fondness for books." Selina beamed. She has a deep passion for tales. She constantly immerses herself in fresh literature. Evan's interest was ignited. "What book do you cherish the most?" Lily finally raised her gaze to meet his. "I'm drawn to tales of adventure." Evan acknowledged this, absorbing the information. "I'll make sure to discover a great one for you eventually." Lily observed him intently for a moment, then gradually inclined her head in agreement. Sophie, in the meantime, had seamlessly transitioned to a different subject. "Mom mentioned you have quite a spacious home," she said while chewing. "A truly enormous house." Evan let out a soft laugh. "I certainly do." "Is there a swimming pool available?" "Absolutely." Her eyes grew wide. "Is it possible for us to view it?" Selina cast her a glance. "Sophie." Sophie sulked. "Excuse me. I simply wish to understand." Evan offered a faint smile. "Perhaps someday." That appeared to please her, and she returned to her ice cream. As Evan sat there, observing the two little girls, his daughters, he became acutely aware of all that he had overlooked. Each fleeting moment, each modest delight, every tiny inquiry they posed. Yet, he stood before us at this moment. He was determined to seize every moment from now on. Evan had always been a person who valued control. In his professional endeavors, in his personal journey, in every choice he faced, he made certain that every detail was meticulously planned. Yet, this entire situation lay beyond his grasp. Weeks had passed since he first encountered Lily and Sophie, and gradually, piece by piece, they were allowing him to become part of their world. Sophie was the more inquisitive of the two, constantly posing questions, always enthusiastic to discover more about him. Lily, on the other hand, remained uncertain. She watched intently, with a cautious demeanor, as if anticipating a demonstration of his worth that remained unspoken. He held no resentment towards her. 5 years had passed in his absence. She felt no assurance that he would remain. That was the reason he didn't think twice when Selina asked him to come over for dinner one evening. He longed to be present. He longed to immerse himself in their world, rather than merely being a transient observer. As he stepped inside, a comforting aroma enveloped him, evoking a sense of nostalgia right at the threshold. He had never set foot in Selina's home prior, yet it resonated with her essence. Warm, welcoming, brimming with intricate details that revealed the narrative of her transformation through the years. The girls occupied the living room, seated on the floor amidst a scattered array of books before them. Sophie glanced upward and beamed. "Welcome to this moment." Evan beamed. "I mentioned that I would be." Lily cast a fleeting look his way before immersing herself once more in her book. Selina emerged from the kitchen, drying her hands on a towel. "Dinner's nearly ready," she remarked, a gentle smile gracing her lips. "I trust you enjoy lasagna made from scratch." Evan let out a soft laugh. "I'm open to any food, as long as it's not from a corporate gathering." Sophie sprang to her feet and took his hand, leading him toward the couch. "This book is a must-see. It features dragons, princesses, and all sorts of enchanting elements." Evan allowed her to pull him down to the floor, where she settled in and eagerly flipped through the pages. Lily, however, maintained her distance, the pages of her book still spread across her lap. "What book has captured your attention?" Evan inquired, pivoting to face her. She paused momentarily before lifting the cover. It was a timeless tale of adventure, reminiscent of the stories he had immersed himself in during his childhood. "That's an excellent choice," he remarked. "That book once held a special place in my heart." Lily looked up at him. "Did you get a chance to read it?" He gave a slight nod. "On multiple occasions. The most captivating moment unfolds as the story reaches its conclusion." She squinted her eyes just a bit. "No spoilers, please." Evan lifted his hands in a gesture of capitulation. "I wouldn't even consider it." For the first time, a subtle smile danced on her lips before she returned her gaze to the pages. Selina summoned them to the table a few minutes later, and to Evan's astonishment, the evening seemed almost ordinary. They conversed. They chuckled heartily. Sophie enthusiastically shared her experiences from ballet class. Lily casually mentioned an interesting tidbit from the book she was engrossed in. Selina couldn't help but roll her eyes at Evan's teasing about her cooking skills, though a hint of warmth lingered beneath her reaction. After dinner, while Evan was assisting with clearing the table, Lily unexpectedly broke the silence. "Will you be staying?" The inquiry took him by surprise. He glanced over to see her by the doorway, her delicate fingers nervously twisting the hem of her dress. "Would you consider staying tonight?" he inquired gently. She gave a slight shake of her head. "Absolutely not. Remain for eternity." Evan felt a constriction in his throat. He cast a glance at Selina, who observed silently, refraining from intervening this time. This was a matter solely between him and Lily. He lowered himself to meet their gaze directly. He expressed his desire candidly. Above all else. Lily gazed at him intently, her blue eyes probing into his depths. "People come and go," she finally remarked. His chest throbbed at the sound of those words. "I shall not," he assured. With a moment of uncertainty, she took a step closer and gently embraced him, her arms encircling his neck. It wasn't constricted. It wasn't frantic. Yet, it held significance. Evan shut his eyes for a fleeting moment, allowing himself to absorb the gravity of the situation. He dedicated his existence to constructing barriers, ensuring that no one could inflict pain upon him. In that moment, as his daughter embraced him, a realization dawned upon him. He had shed his fear of vulnerability. For the first time in years, he found something truly valuable to cling to. Evan had always believed that success was defined by figures, the scale of his enterprise, the riches he amassed, the influence he wielded in every boardroom. As he stood in the heart of Selena's living room, observing his daughters bicker about which movie to choose, it dawned on him that this was what truly mattered. A month had passed since that dinner, and everything was different now. Gradually, with great care, he had woven himself into the fabric of their lives, transforming from a mere visitor into someone they anticipated would always be present. He had adjusted his timetable, reduced the late-night gatherings, and dedicated more time to this place, where he truly desired to be. This evening, he had assured them of a movie night. Selena perched on the couch, her legs curled beneath her, observing as Sophie and Lily delved into a spirited discussion. "Last time was my choice," Sophie declared, her arms firmly crossed. "No, you didn't," Lily contended. "You chose the week prior. Now it's my moment." Sophie sulked and glanced over at Evan. "Dad, let her know that I should be the one to choose." Evan paused momentarily. She referred to him as Dad. Though it had occurred before, each instant struck him with an unexpected intensity that left him unready. He locked eyes with Selena, who offered a gentle smile before redirecting her attention to the girls. "Well," he remarked, clearing his throat. "What if we explore both films? One this evening, one the following day." Lily squinted, her gaze sharp and focused. "What happens if you drift off to sleep?" "I stay awake during movies." Selena let out a derisive snort. "That is not true." Sophie let out a soft laugh, while Lily wore a sly grin. "All right, but if you doze off, we'll choose the film for tomorrow." "Agreement," Evan declared, extending his hand. Lily gave it a good shake, feeling a sense of contentment wash over her. Moments later, they found themselves comfortably arranged on the couch. Sophie nestled beside Selena, while Lily settled next to Evan, her legs cozily tucked under a blanket. It felt relaxed and effortless, an experience he could never have envisioned for himself just a year prior. Midway through the film, Lily's head gently leaned onto his shoulder. He remained still, scarcely drawing a breath, terrified that any movement would cause her to retreat. Yet she chose not to. Instead, she let out a gentle sigh, as if she had been carrying a weight for far too long. Evan stole a glance at Selena, who observed with a serene smile playing on her lips. She silently conveyed, "You're doing well." For the very first time, Evan found himself believing that. It lacked perfection. There remained matters to unravel. Yet he was surrounded by his daughters, and they were there for him. He was firmly rooted in place. Not at this moment. Never. The conclusion of this narrative is profoundly moving and satisfying, not due to a flawless resolution, but because it resonates with a sense of hard-won achievement. Evan starts off as an individual who feels he has forfeited all that was ever significant, persuading himself that achievement alone suffices. Upon uncovering the truth of his two daughters, whom he had been unaware of, his entire reality transforms. The strength of this ending lies in its subtlety. It avoids the need for extravagant gestures or theatrical reconciliations. Rather, it highlights the subtle instances, Lily leaning her head against his shoulder, Sophie addressing him as Dad for the first time, Selena casting a glance that conveys her newfound trust in him. These serene, personal instances reveal genuine development, authentic transformation. Evan understands that the 6 years he lost are irretrievable, and he accepts that reality. Yet he decides to be here in this moment, to remain, to demonstrate to his daughters that he is a figure they can depend on. Lily, typically the more cautious and guarded of the two, ultimately letting her guard down at the end is the most evident indication that he has genuinely integrated into their lives. In his relationship with Selena, there exists a quiet yet profound hope. The narrative avoids a neatly tied-up romantic conclusion, instead allowing space for deeper possibilities. This indicates that a process of healing is underway, with trust being restored not only between Evan and his daughters but also between him and Selena. This is more than a tale of a man discovering his role as a father. It's a narrative about deserving the title. Understanding that love transcends obligation, it's about being present each day, regardless of the circumstances. This is precisely what renders the conclusion so gratifying. It's not merely joyful, it's earned.